Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hello. My name is Olivia, and I make videos about anthropology every single Sunday. But today I have a very, very special guest with me. As you guys probably saw in the title, this is Maya. She went to Stanford. Maya, is there anything you'd want to say to the people, introduce yourself that you just think people should know about you right off the bat?
Hey y'all, my name is Maya. I graduated from Stanford this June with my bachelor's in psychology, my master's in sociology. And I love poems and talking about research. So happy to be here.
So Maya and I actually went to high school together. That's how we know each other. A lot of the same friends, same classes, same clubs. We were in Psych Club together in high school, and that was a blast.
Yeah.
And I follow Maya on Instagram, and she is coming out with a new poetry book. And I was just dying to know about it. And I thought that people who watch my videos about anthropology could benefit from hearing about poetry, psychology, sociology experiences at a different university. And if any of that sounds interesting, stick around because Maya is definitely someone that you guys are going to want to hear from. So I'm so happy that you're here and thank you so much for doing
Of
this with
course.
me.
Thanks for having me.
So the first thing that I want to ask, you just said it, but would you say it again? Your major, minor, master's, everything that you studied at Stanford, just so people know kind of your background.
For sure. I graduated with my bachelor's in psychology with a specialization in mind, culture, and society. I minored in creative writing and comparative studies of race and ethnicity. And then I mastered also in sociology.
And how did you do I've been curious about this. How did you do the bachelor's and the master's in the same, like it was over 4 years, right? Is that like a
hmm
Stanford specific program or is that something that you did?
Stanford offers this like co-term program in a couple different disciplines where basically you can stick around for an extra year after the 4 years and get a master's in sociology or engineering or what have you. But I was lucky enough that obviously you and I were both sophomores when COVID hit and all that, and so a lot of our stuff went online. And that first quarter that our classes went online, I decided to just load up on my major requirements. And basically, by junior year, I was pretty much done with my psych major and had the option to graduate out early, but figured, I don't really feel like leaving after 3 years. I want to be around my friends, so I might as well just tack on the other degree and see if I can finish it out in the 4 years and benefit from that undergrad tuition billing too in my aid.
Oh yeah.
So I crunched it. I was a 21 to 22 unit person for most of Stanford, but I think it worked out.
Wow. And would you say that that was worth it, overwhelming, underwhelming?
Overwhelming for sure, because I was like
Yeah.
working two campus jobs for pretty much all of my time at Stanford, two to
Yeah.
three. So a little overwhelming, but worth it because I didn't want to go into debt for the masters. Yeah,
Retweet, dude. I know it's hard. When I look at PhD programs and master's programs, one of the reasons that I like eliminated masters immediately was it always costs so much more to get a master's than to like be paid for a PhD. So it sounds like you made a good call.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
the funding for master's programs is really crazy. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, it's tough and definitely something that I need to look into. So, now the next thing that I would love to hear about is what kinds of things went into consideration when you were trying to choose what to study in school? Because at least for me, I remember feeling very overwhelmed by that decision. And I know a lot of people that watch my videos are like, oh, anthro's interesting, but like other things are interesting too. Like, where do I start? And what was that process like for you?
Definitely. Yeah, like every freshman, I had a crisis about what to major in. I thought about majoring in international relations. I thought about computer science. I think every Stanford student thinks about computer science for a
Oh,
second. And then I
yeah.
took like the easiest coding class you could possibly take and did not like it at all. So that
Okay.
that got eliminated pretty quickly. International relations got eliminated pretty quickly once I realized a lot of the classes were more colonial in thinking and
Mm.
structure than I might
Mhm.
be interested in. Um, and so I had taken intro to psychology in my winter quarter of my freshman year. And really enjoyed it. And I had always been interested in psychology, even in high school. I started the stupid little psych club and
Oh
stuff, and
yeah.
that was really interesting for me and fun. And I had always had like this, I'd always been drawn to psychology. Um, and so taking intro to psych, that was actually my first B. And
Really?
yeah,
Maya, proud
funnily
of you,
enough,
dude. Everyone's got to get
I
one.
I got a lot more.
Oh, so did I, dude.
Yeah, yeah, but it was challenging, and the class challenged me in ways that I didn't expect it would.
Mm,
Um, and I ended up leaving the class with a lot more questions than answers. Not in a bad way. I mean, I've definitely learned stuff.
mhm,
But I left the class feeling very curious, especially about cultural psychology and minority mental health. Um,
mm,
and through my major, even after I chose that major, I took classes in cultural psychology, in racial and ethnic identity development, and I still had, questions about what more can I learn about minority communities, especially Arab American communities, definitions,
mm.
experiences, and symptoms of mental wellness and health. Um, so I think wanting to keep following that question kind of led me to fall into that major.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And so again, I don't know how familiar you are with anthropology specifically, but anthropology has four main like subfields.
Mm,
There's
mm,
biological anthropology, cultural anthropology, archaeology, and linguistic anthropology. And so
mm.
I know a lot about cultural anthropology, but I don't think I know anything about cultural psychology. What is that? That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't realize Anthro had four subfields. That's really cool. One of
Yeah.
my best friends here is an Anthro major. She's really interested in cultural medical anthro. So
Mhm.
yeah,
That's
whenever I
so
talk to her, I
cool.
think of you.
Tell
Yeah.
her to come on here.
I will. But so cultural psychology kind of really started becoming like more of a movement in psychology from my understanding in the late 90s, when
Mhm.
people were like, maybe we should like try and make psychology more accessible to non-white people and non-American people, especially because so much
Mhm.
of psychological literature occurs among have you heard the acronym weird, like
Weird.
Western
Yeah.
educated, yeah, yeah,
Oh
all that,
yeah.
yeah. So it's especially occurring among like white middle class undergraduate students. So wanting to figure out ways that psychology can be made applicable and effective and accessible um, to other communities. And so a lot of work in cultural psychology is based on adapting therapeutic interventions, on developing frameworks of treatment that are based in communities rather than adapted to communities based on Eurocentric models.
Nice.
Um, yeah, so it's a really cool field.
That's amazing. That sounds so yeah, as you know, you've heard of medical and cultural anthropology, and that has a lot to do with kind of a lot of what you said, understanding minority communities not based on these like Western ideas. But there's less of the, I think, solution driven component that psychology does have, right? It's like, okay,
Mm,
here's a culturally specific issue. How do we help people with this culturally specific issue, right? Um, because anthropology is mostly about like just understanding how people are feeling, why people make certain decisions and stuff like that. So the part of psychology that is a little bit more action oriented, I really appreciate. I respect it a lot. I actually wanted to do a psychology minor, but UCLA doesn't have one, so I had to make something else
dang.
work. I know they have developmental psychology, but I wasn't as interested in that as like psychology more broadly. So that sounds
Mhm,
amazing though. I think I'm definitely going to look into some cultural psychology and medical anthropology overlap because I feel like there's a lot in common there. So that's amazing.
mhm.
Now you said earlier that Stanford has different like master program options, and I was curious. There's probably quite a few of them, right? It's Stanford. Why did you choose sociology to be your master's?
Yeah, so kind of like what you said about making things work. The psychology coaching program was canceled the year that I entered.
Oh,
So like I
you're
toured Stanford and they
kidding.
told me like you can get a master's in psych. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Of course I'm gonna come here. And then my freshman year, they were like, just kidding. So I had to
Oh,
figure out, like I do want to get a master's. I want to learn more about data analysis techniques and research methodology. So the discipline that felt closest, that most cousin psychology to me was,
yeah.
yeah, so. So I ended up applying to the sociology program, getting connected to a Palestinian American sociology professor, Professor
Wow.
Assad Assad. He was super wonderful. He actually, mentored me and helped me with my master's thesis, which was really exciting. But yeah, that was kind of how I came to Soch.
That's amazing. And how was it to be in a program that was, not necessarily what you signed up for or what you thought you were getting? Did you like make the best of it? Was it still frustrating?
Yeah, I think I knew I couldn't or didn't want to apply to like a co-term in say mechanical engineering or computer science, and
Yeah.
also I wasn't eligible for it anyway.
Heck
But
yeah.
yeah, but I knew also that I definitely felt in my first couple classes a little bit like an outsider in sociology, even though psychology isn't like so horrifically far from soc.
No.
It also helped that I had a couple friends who were sociology majors, and so I had talked
Mm,
to them a little bit about how they felt about the major. And I had always thought, kind of like you said, I always liked how specific psychology was and how solution driven it was.
mhm.
Sociology always felt to me a little more abstract or more macro. Um, so it was definitely interesting the first couple classes, and I think the more classes I took, the more I felt like it was actually informing some of my learning in psychology by
Mm,
teaching me a little bit more about, the macro structures. I took a class on like foundational social theory where I read a bunch of like Marx and Hegel, and I was like,
mm.
huh, like, the structures of capitalism. Although obviously I could conceive of that before as a psych major, being able to more structurally think about the ways capitalism and class impact psychological experience. Just and also I took a PhD level class on intersectionality theory, methods, and research,
Wow.
and being able to think about how other levels of experience beyond ethnicity and gender, nationality, English fluency can impact someone's symptom experience, expression.
Mhm.
That was also really interesting. So it was kind of cool to extend some of my social science knowledge in kind of a new but neighboring field, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's amazing. I always, when people ask me how to, it's not quite the same, but how to choose a minor, to go with maybe their anthropology major if they want a minor in anthropology, I always try to push people to, push it a little because I do think it's a really amazing thing to get to step into a different discipline and push the bounds of what like you're taught to understand because it's like as much as we don't want to believe it, like psychology definitely has certain pillars that it sticks to. Same for sociology and anthropology. I'm a big fan of pushing subjects to consider how other subjects do work. And so anthropology is very micro. It's very like you'll take a very small set of people or one community and try to understand how every single variable impacts a very small set of people, right? And
Mm,
so sociology is, I'm such a fan because it's exactly what you said. It's very macro. I took a sociology course. I didn't like major or minor in it or anything like that. But I really appreciated all the, there's a lot more. I felt like statistical analysis on a bigger scale. And I was like, I feel like this is exactly what anthro needs. You look at these very small communities, and that's very representative, but again, of a very small community. So it's nice to have that, both perspectives. And I think that's amazing that sociology was something that you thought kind of pushed out maybe what you already knew about psychology. That's so awesome.
thank you. It was definitely really interesting to try.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. And do you think then that the program that you did at Stanford or the classes that you did have kind of prepared you for, I don't know, it's a tough thing because I think about what about anthropology in my life has like been really beneficial post college. Do you feel like you have learned some of the skills that maybe you would want from the programs at Stanford?
I think for sure. I think I was always the annoying friend that would like try to psychoanalyze you.
Yeah.
But I think my psych major helped me think about things a little more systematically. I think also
Hmm.
my social masters helped me hmm, maybe approach problems more analytically. I took a lot of like research methodology classes, which I think strengthened my skills as a researcher and also
Hmm.
made me think more about the ways investigation is like shaped and formed and how even the method with which you attack a problem shapes the way. you think about a solution.
Right.
So I thought that was really cool.
That's amazing. I get asked pretty frequently how I think anthropology prepares me for life after college. And it's a question I can't quite answer yet because I'm a few months in, just like you. And so I always like to ask people, even just friends on like a casual basis, how they feel like, education has or has not prepared them because some things are great. And other times I'm like, I wish I took a class on taxes or like other things that like I really need to know. So thank you
I
for
do
sharing that.
also, I definitely feel, and this was a frustration of mine with high school too. Like
Hmm.
we took, there was no like life skills class, and you don't really get that in college either. Like I'm still not super sure how to do my taxes, so I
Yeah,
need to figure that
right.
out soon. Yeah.
It's hard, right? I'm like, okay, April's not super far away. Like it's just those
Hmm.
things that I'm like, I'm learning a whole lot right now about life that I am having to teach myself and my friends have to teach me financial planning, budgeting, being fully independent, repaying loans. Like there's just a lot of things. And like I wasn't quite taught in university how to handle these things. And there's certain things about
Hmm.
my major that I'm like, yes, the workplace, I'm culturally competent. I'm like, I feel good about certain things. But other things like this, I thought that college was the time that you learned them. And that was not the case, at least for me. So I always push people to, take a class on financial literacy or personal finance or anything like that. Cause I look back and I'm like, that would have been nice to know. So, okay, well, rant and rambling aside, now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about probably what this is might be a little selfish, but I am really curious about poetry, your new poetry book. I am so excited to hear about it. And you did poetry when we were in high school together. This isn't a new thing. This has been going on for a while. And before I dive into what is so exciting and on the horizon, I want to hear a little bit more about just where your love of poetry started, how that really began for you. What was it that drew you to it? Because I realized I've never asked you that before, and I'm so curious.
I love that question. I think I've been writing my whole life. Maybe not
Hmm.
like poems, but um, I've been drawn to like short stories, to songs, to just writing these small form things like proto poems since like the first or second grade. And I think
Oh,
they started becoming more poem looking maybe in um the seventh or eighth grade, maybe early high school. And what drew me to poetry and writing as a medium, I think, was that it was always felt so accessible. Like painting, you got to pay for acrylic paints, you got to get a canvas. Dancing, you need lessons, you need voice lessons, etc., etc. Theater, you got to get driven to practice, all this stuff.
yeah.
But writing, the only thing you need is pen and paper. And
Hmm.
so, for my circumstances and for um, the different environments in which I grew up, writing always felt like the most accessible and the most immediate medium. And
Hmm.
that was really liberating. And also poetry, I think, is the medium with the least rules. You could write anything and call it a poem, and who can tell you you're wrong? And as someone with,
True.
issues with authority, that's very appealing. I also just like the formlessness, the rulelessness of poems. I love experimenting with form. And I think being able to enter a medium and not know what you're going to leave with is really exciting. Yeah.
That is so beautiful. I'm like, shoot, I should have been doing poetry all this time. That's so beautiful. And I love to
Thank
hear that. And I
you.
think it's really cool that that's just something that was, it sounds like it was always a little bit there for you ever since you were really young. So, and I feel honored that I got to see at least some of the beginnings of it, becoming maybe a bigger part of your life than it was when you were younger in high school. Cause I've seen you perform some poems. It was a while ago, but I was there and it was always such a sight to be seen. So to see you post on Instagram that this new book is coming out I wasn't at all surprised. I was like, it's Maya. Of course, this is fantastic.
Thank
So
you.
that perfectly leads me into asking, tell me about this book. Where did it start? What's in it? What would you want people to know about it? It's called How to Make an Algorithm in the Microwave. Is that right? Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
start with the title. Start there. Where does that come from? That is so beautiful.
Yeah. So this book was definitely a quarantine baby. I
Mm,
started writing her when Um, it's around, you know, the end of my sophomore year, start of my junior year, when I was just really I had all this time on my hands and I would sit in my dorm and do my online classes and then every night just be tapping away and playing around in my Google Doc. And I think the title and the mission of the book came from, you know, like obviously we started like very newly digital lives when the pandemic started. Yes. I also think I've always been interested in technology as a surveilled body from coming from, you know, as a gender marginalized member of a constantly surveilled community. I felt
Mhm.
surveilled from many different lenses throughout most of my life. And so when I think about technology, especially, you know, computers and phones and the devices that we're creating very intimate relationships with, you know, our phones have our emo little notes app ramblings, they have our food preferences, they have our social media tags, they have
Yeah.
you know? And so it made me curious about those devices, especially the idea of the algorithm. And I'm sure being at this CS school was also a huge factor in like being really curious about the guts and the entrails of what's in
Yeah.
a computer and an algorithm. And especially also learning about things like the bias encoded into algorithms. Algorithms can be racist. Algorithms are not like this like impartial tool.
Oh yeah,
They're yeah,
absolutely.
they're beasts created by us. So of course they
Mhm.
carry some of the biases humans carry as well. And
Absolutely.
so I was very curious, I think, to reflect some of that feeling of being watched back onto the devices that watch us. And also to
Mm.
inquire about the inner life of those devices. Especially as our AI and as our technology gets smarter, it poses a
Yeah.
lot of questions about I don't know. I don't know if you've ever seen Ex Machina, but the rights and the consciousness of our technology, which I'm also
Mhm.
curious about. Um, so I think that's where the title and the mission of the book come from. I especially love the idea of defiling what we think of as invincible or
Mm.
perfect clinical technology, because that's not true. Um, and whenever we think of any device as like a perfect impregnable thing,
Mhm.
then we make it, I think, godly or we reify it in a dangerous way. And so
Mhm.
being able to kind of get intimate with technology, with technological forms like code and loop and recursion, I think it opens up a little bit more curiosity about how we're putting these technologies together and for what purposes. So I think that's what a lot of the book is about. The book is also
Mm.
about girlhood,
I
Arab
love it.
American girlhood, and just
Mhm.
girlhood in general. Um, yeah.
That is amazing. This is a little bit of a not a side note, but I actually I'm becoming a podcast person, and I have you ever listened to the Lex Friedman podcast? It's pretty interesting. He has like a bunch of just really amazing people on, and I actually just recently listened to a podcast. I believe he interviewed a researcher from MIT, and she is um, the episode was called Social Robots, and
Hmm.
they discussed a lot of what it sounds like is creatively put in the poetry form in your book, and I would highly recommend listening to it. It's the episode is definitely called Social Robots, but they discuss, you know, how do we see these creations that we've made? Why
Hmm.
do we have, certain opinions on robots? Why do we choose to anthropomorphize robots sometimes? All these different really interesting questions that I never thought about, and it definitely pushed my mind to think about things that I hadn't before, in terms of like new AI technology becoming smarter, everything. Yes,
Is
yes,
it?
that's
Yeah. Okay.
that's the
Cool.
one. You never know what you're gonna find on there, trust me. But that was definitely an interesting one to listen to. And so I'm like, I feel like I've been positioned and I feel like I listened to it at just the right time before talking to you about
Oh, awesome. I'll definitely have
yeah,
to listen because
it's
I'm very
it's
interested in, yeah.
perfect. Then you'll definitely enjoy listening to it. It's some really unique and intelligent perspectives on these conversations that I think are becoming more poignant, like with every day passing. Um, and I'm so excited to get my hands on how to make an algorithm in the microwave. I'm so excited. And I think the last like big question that I would have for you is what kind of an impact do you think your poetry book would have. This could be on the average person, on society. What do you really want people to take away from this creative quarantine child that you are sending out into the world?
Yeah. I guess I hope I wrote the book for and about girls like me. And when I say
Mhm,
girls like me, I think especially about second generation girls. I think especially about Arab girls and um, girls who are struggling with language and nation. I think
mhm,
also I hope people leave. So I hope those girls leave the book with a feeling of home, or at least a little bit of familiarity, and the knowledge that they're not alone. I think
right.
also I hope people in general leave the book with more questions about their phones and about the
Mhm,
technology that they're getting more intimate with. I think um, I'm not like an anti technology person by any means. I've interacted with family members who are very staunchly anti-tech, who use their little Nokia till AT&T stops carrying them. I wouldn't say I'm all the way over there, but I would definitely say I'm curious about technology, and I think we need to be curious about technology, especially as we enter this newly increasingly digital age. So not to be at war with it, but definitely to be questioning it, interrogating it, and thinking more about the ways we want technology to interact with
mhm.
and integrate into our lives.
That is incredibly beautiful, and I think something that people so easily forget. It's so normal for us now, but if you think, I don't know, even 15 years ago, like in our short lifespans, technology has changed so much. Like
Mhm.
we weren't allowed, at least for me, I was not allowed a phone until what's now considered very late,
Mhm.
and the screen time rules and stuff. And I see even the simplest things like that, the age is becoming younger and younger. And it's I feel like it's changing under the radar, but really it's right in front of our noses. And so
Mhm.
I think it's really great that that's something that you're putting out into the world. My favorite things are, I love to read things that make me question, why I see things the way I do, which is part of why I love anthropology or psychology or sociology. So I am so excited to, like I said, read it. I'm going to be linking it down below for anybody who wants to order it. I think it's going to be a fantastic time, and I'm so excited that I have this platform to to share with people the wonderful thing that you have created. So my final question could be anything you want. Is there any message to the young high school or college or even older age people who watch my videos? This could be about education, life. I always just like to ask people if there's any last things that they'd like to share with the community. It's a big question, I know. So no
Yeah.
stress.
Um, I guess I would say I was you once and I was terrified and you'll find your way and you're gonna be okay.
Mhm.
Um, it might not be okay in the way you anticipated, but you will be okay. Um, and if you're watching this video at like 3 a.m. and you're like in some rabbit hole trying to figure out where to go to college, get some sleep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna be okay. You're gonna get
it's
there.
gonna be okay.
That's awesome. Maya, you are the best. Thank you so much for coming on here and talking to me about, college education, robots, all this good stuff, technology, poetry. I feel so grateful. To anyone watching, leave any comments that you might have for me or for Maya down below, and I will do my best to make sure that those questions get answered. If you want more videos on anthropology, go check out some of my other ones. I've got a wide range of topics, but anthropology is definitely the favorite. And yeah, I think that's all I have today. So I'm going to stop this recording, and Maya, I will talk to you in a second. Thanks for watching,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye.